Hello everyone, here's another video on the channel. For those who aren't subscribed yet, please subscribe and feel free to leave your comments below. Today's topic is relationships that still work. I chose to talk about dating instead of, for example, marriages that still work, because the theme of this channel is more focused on the coming great holocaust of the left behind women in their 20s. About the huge number of single women that will exist in society in the 2020s, especially women from the 90s, those born in the 90s. For these women who are single today, marriage is something so distant, so absurdly unattainable. It's getting harder and harder for them to get married, that it's practically like talking about something from a far off future. So I prefer to stick to dating, which is kind of like the pre marriage stage of the ones that still work in this society. Crazy. And it's funny because there's a term that a lot of men use, I use it too, which is unicorn woman. It's like a unicorn because it's a mythical creature that no one has ever seen, but some women are still good people, good girlfriends, good partners. Those would be the unicorn women. I think that pretty soon that's going to flip. It'll be women who start calling men unicorns. You'll be the guy they want is the one who wants to marry them. It's going to be so hard for them to find someone they'd accept. Someone they'd accept because of their hypergamy. Who will want to marry them? That I think in about 7 or 8 years, that term will become more of a thing in the female world than in the male world. So women will start calling the guys who want to get married, who stand out, unicorn men. We're really not that far from that now. I've been meaning to make this video for so long. I mentioned several times in previous videos that I was going to make a video talking about relationships that still work and discuss some of their characteristics. And you'll see how that's completely different from the guys who are single today, from the women who are single. How hard it is to make a relationship work these days. Just one last note about marriage. If you search on Google for divorce rates in Brazil today, you'll see they're rising at an astonishing rate. During the pandemic, it increased alarm. Also, because getting divorced online is becoming easier, and so on. Anyway, the data is pretty reliable, especially since it comes from primary sources like notary offices, civil registries, and so on. Even though the news never mentions it, the overwhelming majority of divorce requests actually come from women. And that's because of the behavior where they're never satisfied and always want new excitement in the marriage. So, about relationships, which is something that a lot of men, most men, and women too, have probably experienced at some point in their lives, right? Those who haven't experienced it aren't really missing out on much, you know? If you look at the relationships that actually work today, couples who are together but not married yet, well, you can really see that they're happy people, right? Not just happy on social media, but people you actually know and think, wow, that's a great couple, right? She doesn't play games with him, and the guy, he treats her well, and he's not an idiot to her, you know? Most of these couples have been together for a long time, right? And by a long time, I mean like since 2010, 2012, you know? Back then, smartphones were still pretty rare in society, right? And Instagram didn't even exist yet, or it was just getting started and all that. So I think everyone listening here definitely has at least one couple of friends like that, right? That you admire, that are dating, that you can see have a healthy relationship where the women, in this case, your friends' girlfriends, or even someone who has a really great girlfriend who can back up what I'm saying, where some women really haven't been poisoned by this kind of behavior. There are a lot of women, of course, it's still a minority, who agree with everything that's said here. That's said on Dom Sandro's channel, on Attitude Alpha, on Bruno's Social Arts, and a bunch of other channels like Raccoon, right? That the men are right in what they're saying. But it's rare for you to see these women say that out in public. Why is that? Because they're really afraid of being labeled as sexist, of being attacked by feminists, you know? Of being called attention seekers and so on, right? I'm talking here about women who genuinely believe this, okay? Not those so called conservatives who partied their whole youth away and now want to act all righteous. I'm talking about sincere and honest women, even though, and yes, they're a minority, but they still exist. So there are a lot of girls who agree with this, and they're usually in healthy relationships. And she knows that all her single friends are stuck. She knows the reasons. She knows they're being too picky. She knows they've had so many experiences, they're living through a lot, and now they're desensitized to genuinely liking someone, and so on. I have some friends who are ex flings, and every now and then I bring up the topic in a lighter way. Because you can't just give women the red pill straight up, because it shocks them. Actually, the best red pills come from the women themselves. When a woman tells it like it is, that's something it's unanimous among men. The best red pills come from the women themselves. When a woman actually admits that women like guys with money, or the so called bad boy behavior, sometimes you can get a woman to admit that. But a few times when I've brought up this topic with some women I know, they actually agreed, right? Obviously, you have to bring it up slowly, little by little, and all that. But if a woman has even a minimum of intellectual honesty, she'll admit that the math doesn't add up, right? What do I mean by the math doesn't add up? Here in Brazil, there are a lot of beautiful single women, but not enough of the guys they actually want to date, right? So there are plenty of single guys too. Also in Brazil, just regular guys, but they want the guys at the top, right? So the regular guys are realizing they're being pushed aside, that they're being left out. They're starting to wake up, and they're more and more, they're starting to hate the whole idea of dating. And marriage, if you mention it, they'll run away faster than Usain Bolt. So the relationships that still work, given all this background, that some women see things this way and some are in healthy relationships, and that marriage has become something distant. There are a lot of single women in their 30s talking about marriage, but they don't even have a steady hookup, just casual sex and all that. With guys who are smooth talkers and know she's feeling lonely. Older relationships didn't have this Instagram interference, or when couples did join the platform and all that. But there are a lot of women who get caught up in this Instagram world. All that stuff with bikinis, butts, yachts, and boats. I'm not making a moral judgment about women who post that kind of thing. I'm just pointing out that this is a huge draw for a lot of guys, boosting women's egos, which in turn makes women fall into that solipsism. They start thinking their virtual value is higher than their real value, and that creates a distortion in the dating market. So a lot of women see all that and think it's just as ridiculous as we do here. They say, wow, what is this? So lame. But usually they keep that to themselves or talk about it with their boyfriend. They're not going to post about it. It's rare, but sometimes there's a women's channel on YouTube saying, like, you're being suckers and you're going to end up alone because feminists just try to tear them down. Feminists are way more aggressive toward women they think are betraying the movement than they are toward any man. This happens within the group. It's the same with the LGBT community. Unfortunately, some gay people have been attacked for taking a different stance from the group. It is basically a virtual massacre that they carry out. So, yeah, when you see a relationship that's working, it's just like you, and sometimes you end up fooling yourself, thinking, man, I wish I had a relationship like that. You're missing out on seeing how good what you have really is. For example, you see a relationship that works, a couple you know, and you think, man, I wish I had a relationship like that. I wish I could meet a girl like that. Wow, that girl I met back then, if it weren't for Instagram, she would be different. I don't know. Anyway, she used to be cool, but then she turned into a stuck up girl. But you're ignoring all the countless cases of guys who got screwed over in relationships. Guys who even got hit with false accusations under the Maria de Pena law, just like that. Guys who had their mental health destroyed. Men who were cheated on and never recovered. Men who were suddenly dumped for no reason at all, just empty excuses. And after breaking up, the girlfriend was out partying and didn't even care because women's remorse toward men is practically zero, non existent. With modern women, it's even negative. So, do you see what I mean? You're focusing on the 5%, 10% of things that work and ignoring the 90% chance you have of getting screwed over, which you managed to avoid. This is a really common mistake. But why is that? 5%, 10% of relationships, those are the ones that still work because those people didn't fall for it. They realize that Instagram and this little virtual world are just a trap. They don't go around talking to everyone. There are a lot of people who are red pilled on the inside. They just keep quiet. A lot of women too who just keep to themselves. And they live a normal life. What you're saying, you can talk about it, but you can't just look at everything from a negative point of view, right? Just like you can't take the exception and think it's the rule. So, this functionality of relationships that are still good, of couples, when you see that, or maybe you're someone who has a girlfriend like that, or a boyfriend, if you're a woman watching, you know that you're the exception, And that the people who are giving up on this diabolical and Machiavellian game that modern dating has become, these people aren't frustrated. They're not unloved. They're not negative. They just realized it's not worth it, that the market is way too inflated, that it's too expensive, not just financially, but especially emotionally, to date a woman these days. Women have little to offer. The conversations are really bad, shallow. Their little world, the life of the modern woman, revolves around Instagram. It's not just digital. Influencers with 200, 300,000 followers who revolve around this. And even any girl with 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 followers. They're stuck in this little world, always watching. The best man, the best couples, and always want more, right? If things just don't work out, do it. It doesn't work. That's why getting into a relationship today, thinking it's going to be like your friend's relationship, he's been with that girl since 2014 and they're a happy couple, is like jumping out of the plane with a parachute that has a 95, 97% chance of not opening, right? So the risk versus reward today is terrible for men. Absolutely terrible, right? It's never been this awful for a guy to date like people do today, right? So it's really hard to meet someone. Me, for example, I keep thinking about all my single friends. I still see them doing a lot of simping and all that just to get laid. But even the most blue pilled guys, the biggest simps, when it comes to dating, they don't even want to anymore. They can't really explain why. They don't know anything about the theory. Red pill, they've never read the literature, they barely know any of the stuff that's out there on the internet, but they're feeling it. Human beings aren't just logical reasoning and empirical. There's also the sensory side, that Aristotelian sensory knowledge of reality. So the guy sees that the environment isn't worth it after he finishes having sex. It doesn't even have to be a casual Tinder hookup, even with a girl he met, maybe at the gym, somewhere, at a bar, but he notices that he's not really trying to create that connection anymore. That cool vibe that relationships used to have, especially in the 2000s, even into the early 2010s, there were still some really healthy relationships back then. The ones that have lasted until today, the ones that haven't gotten married yet, and that are likely to end up in marriage. Whether they'll end in divorce or not, that's another story. The topic of this video here is dating. Like I said, for the vast majority of women today, marriage is a totally distant reality. Women have no idea. Really pay attention to this sentence. Women have no idea that guys don't want to get married. They have no clue. Someone might say, but there will always be some big simple save the hoe. I don't know what. Guys, the men who are going to save these women are at an absurdly low level. Women aren't going to accept these guys. Most of the high value simps, the clueless guys with money, good jobs, or a nice business, those guys have already been snatched up. All that's left for these women is the bottom of the barrel. And that's exactly how they see it. It's not that we as men look down on these guys. The women are the ones who look down on them. So the kind of dating that still works, this basically that. It hasn't been poisoned by all that stuff. These people even got into this virtual world, but they kind of went in already vaccinated against it. The story they built before entering this little Instagram world, some of them fell apart. A lot of healthy relationships. Then, after the girl got on Instagram, sometimes her profile became a bit more active with a lot of followers. This woman thought, wait, I deserve something better, and she dumped her boyfriend, who was her main companion. Most breakups are initiated by women, right? Guys, they're not really getting involved. But when they do get involved, usually they're the ones who get dumped, right? Why? Because guys who have the ability, men are really bad at ending relationships. Because men are usually more needy, less emotionally intelligent. So the guys who do have that ability, nowadays, they're not even getting into relationships, right? So it's not that they agreed to play a harder game. Men are just quitting the game. They're leaving women behind, just out there, left the chance. You see the horde of single women on Instagram, right? Women who aren't even in their 30s yet, like 25, 27 years old, already desperate to find the perfect match, right? Looking for that perfect connection. So there's no point in fooling yourself, okay? With that tiny minority of relationships that actually work out. As much as I've explained here, yes, there are good relationships. There are couples you know who really are happy, right? But that's just a minority. Don't get attached to the minority, okay? With most of them, you're just avoiding the huge headache. If you get lucky in the lottery of life and end up with a great woman, an exception, but they do still exist, just don't count on it too much. Just treat it like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I promise you, as a single man, you won't end up depressed in the future. Men have a lot of hobbies. They figure things out. There's still the availability of sex for men. That's going to increase a lot, even for the guys who are at the bottom of the pyramid right now. There are going to be a lot of single women, women who can't find anyone. These women are needy. And anyway, there are escorts out there for those who are into that, right? So a single man really doesn't have much to worry about, you know? Actually, men are in a really privileged position. They're in a win-win situation, right? Because men are red-pilled. Because if he dates or gets married, right, the chance of him getting screwed over, as long as he knows how to choose, I'm not going to say it's zero, okay? Women are totally unpredictable, but it's less than the guy who's totally blue-pilled, a total simp, getting into relationships in 2021 and seeing that everything's going wrong, right? Believing that just because he sees two or three happy couples out there, couples that started back in 2009 when people were still texting by SMS, is still the same as the woman he's going to meet on Instagram, right? That guy's screwed. Up. And now the red pilled guy, if he gets into a relationship, fine, he probably made a good choice, right? And he has some ways to understand how women act in case he gets caught off guard in a bad way. And if he stays single, he'll be happy too. Because the life of a single man, right? It's full of hobbies, cool things to do, friends, right? A bunch of things women think are super dumb, but men enjoy. Sports, games, and so on, right? Video games, leisure, fishing, poker, whatever, regardless of the guy's vibe, right? But exceptions shouldn't be treated as the rule, okay? So, to wrap things up here as we get into the final minute, right? Modern relationships, in short, the ones that still work, haven't been so poisoned by Instagram. The story from back in the day is still kind of the foundation in the middle of all this mess the modern world has become, with female hypergamy and all that. And the relationships that are starting today, the few guys you see actually asking a girl to be their girlfriend, because it used to be really common to see relationships starting here, posting it on Facebook. Nowadays, it's getting rarer and rarer to see a guy ask a woman to be his girlfriend. When Valentine's Day comes around on Instagram, you mostly see stories about old relationships. It's really rare. New relationships. With these, the chances of guys getting screwed over are huge because they think the world is the same as it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, things were bad, but at least you could still play the game. Now it's terrible and unplayable. So that's my message, my friends. Take care and see you next time.